Back here with Coach Mangini, we're going viral. See, you reposted this video yesterday of you getting tossed by Reggie White. All right, take us through the play.
Coach, we're running the waggle boot. I told them when they put the play in, Reggie's not going to go for the play fake. He's not going to chase down. They were like, run it anyway. He tosses me on Warren moving his feet, then sacks the quarterback. And we're supposed to be friends. God bless his soul. He's no minister of defense, minister of pain. Look at that. Gee, show some of the 300-pounders he was throwing around. Get me off the screen.
Yeah, sometimes as coaches, we just make bad decisions. You want to put, it's not fair. It's just not fair.
Right, waggle bootleg. Oh, Reggie White, he's going to chase down. He's not chasing down. He's he's done that long time ago. He's not doing that.
He didn't even take a step inside.
No.
He just looked at you.
And then he looked at me and said, Chris, what are you doing here? After the game, when we were praying, I was getting ready to pray. I said, Reggie, God, please forgive him for throwing me. I'm supposed to be on his team.
That's unbelievable. Maybe if someone says he's the greatest defensive player ever, you can't argue with him. You can say another name. You can make a case for Lawrence Taylor or Dion
Bruce Smith.
Bruce Smith is Bruce Smith definitely the most underrated. But if Deacon Jones, but if someone says Reggie White is the greatest defensive player ever, they can make the strongest cases for anybody else, and because of things like that. To people like Chris.
I like where you're from that one clip. All right.
No, that's not one. It's not the one clip. It's the whole career.
On to Thursday night football, gentlemen.
On our video, but there's some 300-pounders he was throwing on that video.
They're not on the show.
He's throwing a lot of people.
Yeah, but we need to know them. We need to know their name. We need to see them humiliated on TV.
Fun matchup in this one. 1 and 2 Eagles taking on the 3-0 Packers Thursday night on Fox. Despite the depth and the talent,
stuff like that, y'all make me look.
The Eagles have been riddled with injuries and have struggled
for getting thrown around
to keep Carson Wentz upright. But Wentz isn't concerned. He's a glass half full type of guy. I got through that script.
You did.
We're not really looking at this as a bad spot. We're 1 and 2, yeah, but you know we have a lot of the season left, you know, and we're little things here and there in each game that we know we're going to get corrected, and we're going to be in a good spot. And like I said, we're excited Thursday night to go show what we can do and get going back in the win column.
Coach, you worried about this Eagles team that it could get late pretty soon for them?
Well, when you look at their season last year, they were 4-6 at one point, and then they went 5-1 down the stretch, and things turned around for them. This is a very good team, and they do have a lot of depth, and they're dealing with injuries, and they're dealing with the adjustments from injuries. But the thing they have to control is the self-inflicted wounds. That, to me, is the problem here. Outside of the other challenges they face, it's 3 turnovers in the first half against Atlanta. It's the
allowing a kick return touchdown against Detroit.
Well, yeah,
after a score.
The 105, whatever it was, the 105-yard kick return. There's the long reverse play in the last game where they only had 10 guys on the field. There's things like that are completely in their control. And I know we've talked about the drops. That obviously needs to improve as well. But this is a very good football team on a lot of levels that have been in significantly close games, even with all the mistakes they've made, even with all the injuries that they've had and the things that they've had to overcome. Now, that being said, really good teams don't have a significant amount of self-inflicted wounds. To me, that needs to get controlled first.
And I understand they have all this depth, and the depth is being tested. We talked about how deep their defensive line is. Well, Malik Jackson out for the year. Timmy Jernigan got hurt in week 2. So now all of a sudden the defensive line not quite as deep as it was before. The offensive line, all that depth. Well, Jason Peters gets dinged. Andre Dillard comes in, their first-round pick. He gets dinged. Jason Peters has to come back in the game. So not as deep there as you were going into the season. But they need their best players to play like it. And for them to have 2 sacks on the season is awful. Shockingly, the only team with fewer sacks is Denver. We don't talk much about Denver because they're not any good. But with that talent on defense, how do they only have 2 sacks? But for them to be 31st in the NFL in sacks, for them to only have forced, only 6 teams have forced fewer turnovers this year than Philly. The one way to offset turnovers of your own is to force a bunch on the opposition. They haven't, which is why they're in the negative. 5 turnovers committed, only 3 forced on the season. And the self-inflicted wounds you're talking about of the dropped passes of 10 men on the field on a 44-yard play is I don't know how it happens. We've seen 12 guys on the field. Sometimes too many people are out there. But to have one, too few out there and to have it be a critical play in the game is just, it is the definition of a self-inflicted wound. And where you're worried about Philly is talent. It's not the NBA where you can be the Houston Rockets and through a third of the season find yourself in 13th place and say, what the hell's going on? But the season's long enough teams make the playoffs, talent ultimately will win out. The NFL, man, you can be super talented. You start out 1-3, your margin of error the rest of the year is 2, maybe 3 losses the rest of the way. You mentioned their 4-6 start last year. Yeah, they were able to make the playoffs, but because of that start, no home playoff games. Because of that start, you're in an adverse position when you're trying to go on a playoff run. So I don't question Philly's talent. I do question, are they going to be the team that out of nowhere falls off from where they were projected going into the season? Because it doesn't look like that's going to be New England. Doesn't look like that's going to be Kansas City. New Orleans, we'll see. Philadelphia's at, to me, enormous jeopardy going into this Thursday night game.
The Thursday night game, and then the schedule begins. If you look at Thursday night, where they're going after that, they got the Jets getting the quarterback. He'll be over the high school kissing thing by then. At Minnesota, at Dallas, at Buffalo. If that wasn't, let's get a little Chicago, the bye week, and then you face the world champs in New England. So, as you said, yeah, it can get dark early. Absolutely. Yes, they can recover, but will they have enough once they get to the playoffs? Last year, they were able to recover from the slow start. It's not the way you want it. As a coaching staff, you try to keep your team focused week after week, but the coaching staff knows that schedule's out there, because when you have a schedule like that, how do I get a winning streak? If I get 3 or 4 games under 500, got to keep your eye on Dallas because you're trying to win your division. How do I recover from that when I'm not playing with my frontline players? So I'm concerned about the quarterback, because in week number 2, he throws a dime to Nelson Aguilar down the left sideline. He drops it. Follow back up week number 3, they have 7 drops as a team. Nelson Aguilar leads them. So for me, I'm concerned about the drops. I'm a wide receiver. Them dropping passes, it's not normal. All right, and you can't run your offense effectively, and it affects the quarterback's confidence. So Thursday night, does he let the ball go with the same anticipation, knowing the last 2 games, when I do let the ball go, I couldn't trust my wide receivers? A lot of the passing game has to do with trust. The quarterback's got to trust the protection. He's got to trust the wide receivers. And when I release this ball, I need y'all to apprehend it. And their receivers let them down in week number 2. How many games can your wide receiver group lose for you before you start losing confidence in them? And I know some of them aren't frontline players. So how much confidence do they have in a Thursday night game in Lambeau Field? To me, watch this game very carefully, because if this Eagles team, watch their body language. Because Green Bay could get after them early. They're going to get after the passer. We know their defense creates turnovers. This is a bad situation with the injured team playing 2 games in 5 days, Coach.
It's been tough for them defensively to figure out where they are, who they are. And I say this all the time. You go into the season, you think you're going to be one thing, and then you have to figure out who you actually are. And with the 2 injuries that they had on the defensive line, this has always been a team that's been built from the defensive line back, and they rotate these groups of really good defensive linemen who can also generate pass rush with 4 players. And they're not getting that done this year, so now they've got to incorporate max pressure. You saw it in the Atlanta game. Earlier in the game, they hit a max pressure, they get a pick, it helps them get back into the game. Late in the game, they go back to that max pressure, and now they hit Julio Jones for the 54-yard touchdown. So you're trying to generate it with the D-line. It's not getting done. Now you've got to mix in pressure, and now you've got the risk-reward every single time you do it. Going into this game, they've got 3 corners on the roster. They just had a guy from the practice squad. The starters have a combined 17 starts. It's a young secondary that's going to have to be protected, and there's no depth either.
The NFL's so week to week in this regard. If they win Thursday, then it erases so much of what we're talking about. It's a great win. You go to Green Bay. You feel like, okay, we haven't even played Dallas yet. We can survive it. But if we removed the name Philadelphia Eagles, and I just described a team. This is a team that lost a home game to Detroit. They lost a game to Atlanta where the opposing quarterback was trying seemingly to give it away to them late. They needed a furious rally to beat Washington at home. They have injuries on both sides of the ball. They're giving you 3.6 yards per carry. Their number one wide receiver's injured in Deshaun Jackson. You would say, well, that's not a very good football team. I think Philadelphia can be an excellent football team. Through 3 weeks, though, there's little evidence of that.
All right, Coach, stick around. Take a break coming up. Hey, Jerry Jones is worried about the Saints. We'll tell you why next on First Things First.